Ever feel like that climb to the top, all the compromises? It's like making a deal with the devil.
Oh, absolutely.
Today we're diving deep into that whole idea, looking at the allegations around Sean Diddy Combs,
Yeah.
and we've got a fascinating lens for this.
Right.
Immortal Technique's hip-hop track, Dance with the Devil.
Okay.
Now, before we get into it, remember, this song, it's a fictional story,
Right.
not about Diddy at all.
Okay.
But as we unpack these themes, you'll see these startling parallels to Diddy's legal troubles.
I see.
It's going to make you think about ambition, power, fame, the whole deal. Ready?
Yeah, let's do it. What I find so compelling here is how this song, Dance with the Devil, it's like it foreshadows real-life situations, even though it was written years ago.
Right. It's like Immortal Technique was tapping into something like universal about the human condition. But before we get too deep, let's set the stage. So the song tells the story of Billy.
Okay.
This young man caught in this web of crime and violence, all to chase respect, belonging, things a lot of us crave, right?
Absolutely. And it's a story that resonates because we've all felt that pull, that desire for acceptance to prove ourselves. But Billy takes it to a dark place.
Yeah.
And the consequences, they're devastating.
It gets intense. And the song, it doesn't shy away from like the brutal realities of his choices.
Yeah.
And that's where that deal with the devil metaphor comes in.
Right.
It's that chasing power, especially through morally questionable means, can straight up destroy you.
Precisely. It's that slippery slope of ambition, how each compromise, each transgression takes you further down a path you might not escape. And that brings us to Diddy.
Because, let's be real, when you think of music moguls who've reached the pinnacle of success, Diddy's name is right up there.
Yeah.
But now he's facing these serious allegations.
Right.
We're talking sexual assault, coercion, a pattern of abuse. And while he hasn't been found guilty of anything yet, the parallels to Dance with the Devil, they're hard to ignore.
Yeah, it's crucial we remember these are allegations. Our goal isn't to play judge and jury here.
Yeah.
But we can examine the situation through the song's lens to understand these complexities of ambition, power dynamics, and the potential consequences.
Exactly. And one of the biggest parallels is this whole idea of ambition. Billy, in the song, he's driven by this need for recognition. And Diddy, from what we know, he built his empire from the ground up, right? Driven to succeed, to be at the top.
And that's where things get interesting, because this drive, while it can be a powerful motivator, it can also be blinding.
Okay.
In Diddy's case, there are these freak-off parties now at the center of some of the allegations.
Okay, so for those not in the know, can you explain what these freak-off parties were, and how do they tie into ambition?
Sure. Essentially, these were high-profile parties hosted by Diddy, known for their exclusivity and, let's say, uninhibited atmosphere. But according to allegations, they were more than just parties. They were about power dynamics. It's alleged that Diddy used these events to exert influence, control over attendees.
Creating an environment where exploitation could occur.
Exactly. And it's here where the song's message about moral compromise becomes chillingly relevant. Was Diddy, blinded by his ambition, allegedly using these parties to fuel his image and dominance, even if it meant allegedly exploiting others? It's a question that echoes Billy's dissent in the song.
And this idea of using parties, social gatherings, for something more sinister, it's not exactly new, is it? I mean, we've seen this pattern throughout history, especially when power is involved.
It's a tale as old as time. When you have immense power concentrated in the hands of an individual, the lines can become blurred. What starts as ambition can morph into something darker, a sense of entitlement, even a belief that you're above the rules.
Right.
And that's a dangerous game to play, especially in an industry as high stakes and image-driven as music.
It makes you think about that saying, more money, more problems.
Right.
But instead of just money, it's about the allure of power and what it can do to a person.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're not just talking about a song or a celebrity scandal. We're talking about the human condition, about the seductive nature of power, and the fine line between ambition and something much more sinister.
And that's where we're going to leave you hanging for now. But before we get into the specifics of the allegations and how they connect to this idea of dancing with the devil, we want to hear from you. Have you ever felt this pull between ambition and your moral compass? What do you make of this connection between a hip-hop song and a real-life situation? Hit us up on social media and let's keep the conversation going.
You know, as we unpack these allegations against Diddy, it's important to remember, Dance with the Devil, it doesn't, offer easy answers.
Right.
If anything, it throws up even more questions about power, about fame, about whether redemption is even possible once you've, gone down that dark path.
It's true. In the song Billy's Story, it ends tragically. He gets what he thought he wanted, the power, the respect, but it comes at a horrific cost. He loses his soul in the process.
And that's what makes this conversation about Diddy so compelling. Because while he's facing, like, serious legal repercussions,
Yeah.
there's also this question of reputational damage,
Yeah.
this potential loss of legacy.
It's like, at what point does the price of success become too high? And in Diddy's case, with the details of these accusations coming to light, you have to wonder, was it worth it? Did he, like the song suggests, did he sacrifice his integrity for the sake of power?
It's a question that goes way beyond just the music industry, you know?
Yeah.
We've seen this pattern through history, in politics, in business, even in our personal lives. This allure of power, this desire for more, it can lead people to make choices that ultimately destroy everything they've built.
It's like that whole thing, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Right.
But it's not always so black and white, right?
Right.
I mean, there are plenty of powerful people who use their influence for good.
Absolutely. And that's what makes these conversations so nuanced. There's no like single answer, no formula for how power will affect an individual. But what we can explore are the psychological factors at play, the pressures, the temptations that might lead someone down a dark path.
So, like, what goes on in a person's mind when they have that level of fame and fortune? Is it truly intoxicating? Addictive, even?
It's a fascinating area of study. Psychologists have actually found that power can actually change the way your brain functions. It can activate reward centers, similar to drugs or gambling, creating a sort of feedback loop where you crave more and more power just to maintain that high.
So it's like an actual addiction.
It can be, yeah.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense, especially when you look at the music industry, where there's this constant pressure to stay relevant, to be on top.
Precisely. And that pressure can be immense, especially for someone like Diddy, who built an empire on his image and influence.
Which brings us back to those freak-off parties, because according to the allegations, these weren't just about having fun or celebrating success. They were about maintaining that power, that image of being larger than life.
And that's where it gets really interesting. Because in Dance with the Devil, Billy's descent into darkness, it's fueled by this need to prove himself, to be seen as powerful and in control. And these parties, if the allegations are true, could be seen as Diddy's way of doing the same, allegedly using his status to orchestrate these situations where he could exert power and control over others.
It's almost like he was creating his own little world where the rules didn't apply.
And that's a common thread that we see in these stories of power and corruption. There's often this disconnect from reality, a belief that the normal rules of, morality, accountability, they just don't apply.
Like they're above the law until they're not. And in Diddy's case, the legal system is definitely taking these accusations seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, he was denied bail, which is a pretty big deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The severity of the accusations is not being taken lightly. And whether or not he's found legally responsible, the court of public opinion is already in session. His reputation has taken a major hit, and it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in the long run.
Yeah. It's a stark reminder that even with all the money and power in the world, there are still consequences for your actions. And those consequences can be far-reaching, affecting not only you, but those around you, just like Billy in the song, who ends up destroying everything and everyone he ever cared about. It's heavy stuff, right? This idea that chasing power can just consume you, blind you to what really matters.
It really is. And it kind of forces us to confront this uncomfortable truth that these situations, it's not just about like individual failings.
Right.
There are often systems in place that kind of enable this behavior.
Okay, so let's talk about that. When we talk about systems, what are we really talking about? Is it the music industry? Is it society as a whole? Like, what are we talking about here? It's multifaceted. The music industry, with its focus on image, its hierarchies of power,
Yeah.
it can create an environment where exploitation is more likely to occur. I mean, think about it. You've got these young, often vulnerable artists eager for their big break. They're entering a system where they might feel pressure to do whatever it takes to succeed.
And then you have these gatekeepers, the record execs, the producers, the people with the money and the influence who hold the keys to that success.
Right.
It's like a recipe for trouble, especially if those gatekeepers, they're more concerned with profits and image than with the well-being of the artists themselves.
Exactly. And let's not forget the role of NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, which are everywhere in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
These agreements can silence victims and protect those in power, making it much more difficult to hold abusers accountable.
It's like a whole other level of dancing with the devil, where the system itself is almost designed to keep things quiet,
Mhm.
to protect those at the top. It's a system that often prioritizes silence over justice. And it's not just the music industry. We see this pattern in other fields as well.
So where do we go from here? If the system itself is part of the problem, how do we even begin to change it?
That is the million-dollar question. But I think it starts with awareness, with having these kinds of conversations, shining a light on these power dynamics, calling out injustices, and refusing to accept the status quo.
And holding people accountable. Because as we've seen with these allegations against Diddy, even those at the pinnacle of success, they aren't above the law.
Exactly. Nobody is above the law, regardless of their wealth, their status, their influence. And when we start holding everyone accountable, that's when real change can happen.
So we're wrapping up this deep dive, and we're left with a lot to think about. We've gone from this hip-hop song about one man's downfall to this broader conversation about power, about the systems that enable abuse and the importance of accountability. It makes you wonder, what choices would we make if we were in Billy's shoes or even Diddy's? And how can we, as individuals and as a society, how can we create a world where those choices don't lead us down such a dark path?
It's a question worth pondering because ultimately it's up to all of us to challenge the systems that enable abuse and to create a culture where everyone, no matter their position, is treated with respect and dignity.
So as you go about your day, think about this. What small step can you take in your own life to challenge those power dynamics and create a more just and equitable world? It's a conversation that needs to continue, and we want to hear from you. Join the discussion on our social media pages, and let's keep this important dialogue going. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep challenging assumptions, and keep diving deep.